Hey guys, it's Ollie from Rad Season. I'm excited to be joined today by action sports agent extraordinaire, producer, entrepreneur, Circe Wallace. Circe, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And you've just come back from Jackson. How, with everything going on, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, it was definitely an exciting adventure, and I feel like my response has been a crowning achievement of my career, having been a snowboarder, my whole life, and being a part of something like this in kind of elevating the game has been incredibly rewarding. Not just professionally, but personally. I
Yeah.
feel very enriched by the experience. I will say the response. I mean, we knew it would be good, but the response just was astounding.
Yeah.
And I think, this is now kind of the downside of success in that it's kind of all consuming because there's just so much interest. And now, how do we up level what we just did is an interesting challenge.
Yeah. And how much preparation went into it? I mean, has this kind of been,
Well, we've been working on this since 2008. So what's that, 13 years? Obviously, we did the first natural selection in Jackson Hole in 2008, and then we did supernatural and ultra natural, and we've done a variety of renditions. I think what's interesting about this one is that we really have decided that this is a viable property, and we are doing a global tour. And I think providing an alternative to what has been the degradation of competitive snowboarding.
hmm,
So it's been a long time in the making, and working with Travis and Liam has certainly been incredibly intense, but also kind of a dream team.
nice. And is there anything that you can sort of share with what you guys are working on for the next two events? Is that something? Is
Yeah.
it all kind of?
Yep. I'm happy to discuss. I think obviously, and I shouldn't say obviously because a lot of people might not know this, but Jackson Hole was the only live event. So we went live in Jackson. That was for a variety of reasons, but primarily because we had a static venue, we had mountain ops, and the ability to essentially build a production facility on mountain.
Yeah.
It gets a little more challenging when you get into Baldface, Valhalla territory, and Alaska. So both of those shows are essentially Baldface is we've had to pivot pretty dramatically because of COVID.
Yeah.
So we're only able to have Canadian athletes present because of Canadian strict regulations, and to be compliant in COVID, we're not really even allowed to have an event. So we've kind of had to shift to a more content-driven initiative.
Hmm.
So there's some information coming out in the next couple days in terms of format, but essentially it's an opportunity for athletes to create content, and then ultimately will be judged on that content, which will then we'll take one man, one woman from that event who win to Alaska.
Okay. Nice. Well, it's amazing that you're still continuing, keeping it going with everything that's happening. And yeah, hats
Yeah,
off to you guys for doing that.
yeah, I mean, I feel like the fact that we pulled off Jackson and everyone tested negative, everyone was healthy in and out, was an incredible feat, and the gods shined upon us because It was not easy, and hats off to Liam, just even in dealing with like international travel waivers and getting everyone there was just
Yeah.
an incredible feat. And the fact that everyone stayed healthy, everyone walked away healthy, I think just felt like that in itself was an incredible accomplishment. And I think we've known all along that we were going to have to stay pretty nimble in how we approached our international stop, given the times we had some kind of uh, information that allowed us at least to have a comprehensive contingency plan,
Yeah.
because that was the only way it was going to be effective. And I think we've done the best with what we've got. And Jeff at Baldface has really worked with us in helping find solutions. And that is such an important venue for us, and we're very excited that we have found a solution to continue our objective of a 3-stop tour.
Nice. Good
Yeah.
stuff. Well,
Yeah.
I guess I'd love to take it back to the beginning and how you got into action sports, because you grew up in Oregon, is that right?
I did. I was born in Eugene, and I was there till my teens, and then at 14 I moved to Seattle, and then I was there really until I moved here in my 20s. So Northwest kid for sure.
And was it skateboarding that kind of
Yeah.
what you first got into?
Yes, I started skateboarding in middle school and had a group of friends, specifically a girl, Anita Tessenson, and we were besties starting in middle school. She was a little bit older than me, and she was a gymnast who was tired of being a gymnast, and we both discovered skateboarding at the same time. And at that time, this was like the early 80s. um, Skateboarding was kind of having its day, and so we really had a lot of freedom in Eugene. It was, it's a small hippie college town,
Mhm.
and so skateboarding was just our lives. Like if we weren't in school, or even when we were in school, we were playing hooky and skating the streets of Eugene, which was really great because kind of always been a little bit of an outlier socially. Like I didn't fit in kind of to the norm, or we had the cliques then that was like the Wavos or the Sochis or the Preppies, which were the Sochis. But I was kind of, a little bit of an outcast, and skateboarding was like this incredible community that we built in Eugene, and we would skate late into the night and really just fell in love. There's like something like a switch that flips when you are a skater, where like how you see the world changes
Yeah.
in terms of like, you'll see transitions, or you'd see a curb, or it just totally changed my perception of the world, and certainly I think kind of set the table for the rest of my life.
And did were you then looking at sort of different sports then as well that were, I guess, sort of similar to the culture of skating? So we like looking at things like surfing as well,
Yeah, I
or
mean, I crushed on a surfer boy who had moved from Santa Cruz in high school my freshman year. And so, I definitely, there's always some crossover, the Jimmy Z's ads, or, certain things that made, board sports compelling. And it was certainly the entry point for me from a snowboarding perspective. Like sideways
Mhm.
stance was definitely, from that point forward was what was interesting to me. Just,
Yeah.
from how you perceive the mountain or the streets, approaching it from a kind of transitional mindset was definitely, I was drawn to that. I didn't start surfing until my 20s in
Okay.
in Washington, in Westport. I was dating Jamie Lynn, and my best friend at the time, Ingrid, was like hell bent on learning how to surf, and I was not quite as interested because surfing Westport, Washington is kind of intimidating, to say the least. But she was just totally committed, and inevitably Jamie kind of went along for the ride. He had been surfing, occasionally, and so started surfing up there. But I had already been snowboarding for quite a few years at that point. And then I moved to Southern California, and surfing is a huge passion, and
Yeah.
something I do as often as possible.
So when did you start snowboarding? Was that in high school or?
84
Okay.
was the first year I went snowboarding, and I had a friend in school, Sandy, who had a trust fund boyfriend named Thatcher, who had like a cute Jetta, and they were into snowboarding, and convinced me to come along to Hoodoo Mountain one day. And I took a pair of like men's work boots and put Air Jordans inside of them as my bladders. I was on a Burton Woody, the ones with the metal edges, just the little ones at the tail. And the chairlift hit me in the back of the head on one of my first dismounts, and I bit all the way through my tongue, and I was just spitting blood, but having so much fun that I continued to ride the rest of the day, and that was it. I was in love.
Yeah. And then did you sort of try and go like whenever you could, like?
Yeah. So Sandy and Thatcher would go pretty regularly. I remember driving in his Jetta, listening to Roxanne by the Police, and I have like really fond memories of just even, there's something about like the transition into the mountains too that was really, it was like getting into nature. I had been skateboarding, and I'd had kind of a troubled youth. I took a lot of drugs and a lot of psychedelics, which actually I think were kind of expansive, to be honest, as it relates to snowboarding and skateboarding, just from perception, right? But definitely was like looking for thrills and pushing the edges, I think, in terms of what I liked getting out of my comfort zone. I think I've always been a little bit of an adrenaline seeker, and so I think snowboarding, getting me into nature and the magical kind of transition that happens from, even though Eugene is a small, cute little town, moving into the mountains and the expansiveness and opportunity to be in nature, I think really resonated with me. And I kind of found solace in the thrill seeking in a much healthier environment than I had traditionally. And I had grown up with pretty hippie parents who would camp all the time. Like camping was, every weekend, every opportunity. We drove across country and camped the whole way a couple times. We drove in a little Datsun 510 and, toured the nation really camping. And I, at about 14, was just like, I'm done with camping. I'm done with parents, basically. And, interestingly enough, I think I was rebelling against that. But it was within me, like the appreciation for nature in a way that I really did feel happy in that environment. But snowboarding, it was, it was a fusion of nature and adrenaline that really was what really turned me on. I got to have my thrills and be in that magical environment with my friends, and that really worked for me.
Nice one. And was there any was there a point at the beginning where you thought, okay, you'd like to take this a little bit more seriously, and when you thought that it could even become a career?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always wanted to be a pro skater, right? And girls kind of are rarely included. Anita got sponsored by Powell. I was grounded, and there was a contest in Eugene. And Anita was a better skater than me. She had a gymnast background, so she was doing like ho-hos and kick flips, like ages ago. I think she was probably one of the more progressive street skaters in the world for her time. And I wasn't quite as good as her, but I had gotten grounded and couldn't go to a contest for some reason. I'm sure I did something bad. And she got discovered by Pal, her and another local girl, Leaf, got discovered by Pal, and I missed out on that. And it was just utterly devastating to me. And, they were just on Flow, but, they got an ad and it was like, kind of first generation female pro, and Anita deserved it. Like, there's no question in my mind that was all very serendipitous. But there wasn't a lot of opportunity for women in skateboard or girls in skateboarding, at that time. And really not until recently with Olympic inclusion has, I think, there been real opportunity to like make a living.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really start thinking about snowboarding like competitively or as a path to a successful career until later. And I think a lot of that was, it was just early, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody knew what it was going to be, and it fit my ethos because we were totally like anti-authority, and we could still be, punk kind of skate rats, and we had like the skiers to push up against, and there was still that like angst and rebellion that I loved about skateboarding.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also a lot more opportunity.
And how are the challenges sort of going into, because it was such a new time, right? I mean, dealing with the industry then. I mean, how was that?
It was like a fun little social club. Like the industry was so nascent that it was like I finally found my friend group, and it's interesting because, I don't talk to anyone I went to high school with, but I talk to everyone I grew up snowboarding with, whether it's Jamie Lynn or Michelle Taggart or, all of those, original Ingrid Gunderson, who was my best friend, all of those people are lifelong friends and relationships, Jason Bass, Jason Loeb, like all the Baker crew, Gillian Kelly, like that was my tribe. I had found home, and so I think it was pretty organic in terms of, then I just started doing the Northwest Series, which was, Bob Barcy of the Bike Factory, and then he sponsored me, and it was like, I would be one of 3 or 4 girls at the Northwest Series events, and I did well in those, and I got a little taste of winning, and I really liked that. I'm kind of inherently competitive, so I think that was a driving force for me that was reinforced by some small wins.
Mm-hmm.
That then kind of set me on my trajectory.
Nice. And I mean, this was all, so it was during your 20s, right? That was all kind of early 20s.
Yeah, I think I was like 18 or 19. I went to an alternative high school when I moved to Seattle. So I kind of got kicked out of my mom's house for being a brat at 14, and went to go live with my dad in Seattle, and lived in Lower Queen Anne, which was right by Seattle Center, and was like a really fun and great place to be, and was still skateboarding a bunch. But snowboarding really took off for me there because of access to mountains. There's so much there. You can go to Snoqualmie or Pac West for night skiing. There, Mount Baker really was a little bit of a trek, Crystal Mountain, but it was all right there. There was just so much access to diverse snowboarding. I didn't really do well in school, and my freshman year I went to Franklin High, which is like a real inner city Seattle school. We were desegregated, so I actually took a bus into Mount Baker, which is where where Franklin High was, and it was just a hard transition for me. I didn't really fit in. I was very uncomfortable. especially coming from like small town Eugene and having my little skate clique to this kind of more, I don't know, urban. And it was just a big high school. It was massive. And so I didn't really do very well there. And I wanted to drop out, and my parents found me an alternative school called Summit K-12, which was a kindergarten through 12th grade alternative school. And I ended up there, and they had a ski program. So every Friday during the winter, they literally filled up a school bus and took kindergartners through 12th graders skiing. And no one was snowboarding at that time, but I essentially wrote a program and submitted it, which would allow for me to get credit and to snowboard instead of ski. And I think it's an alternative school, right? Like they totally like nurtured ambition. And, you know, I took that initiative. And so they were very, very responsive. And so I would go ski with my school every Friday. And I ended up graduating from Summit K-12 a year early. I took night classes with a graduating class of, I think, 16 kids. And I got like kind of a cool education in a very unorthodox environment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then when did sort of like sponsor, like, so then we used to like seeking like sponsorship when we kind of.
Oh yeah, I would send sponsor me letters to everyone. And, you know, I was never afraid to like ask for attention. So I was pretty prolific in my letter writing and you know, seeking opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And do you reckon that was sort of like with that confidence of growing up, and, you know, was that sort of coming from the school, you reckon, and like having that competitive sort of streak? Or
I think I am just inherently ambitious. And so that's just my constitution. And I just found something to sink my teeth into that I really loved. And so I think that definitely was a foreshadow for my agent capabilities, that I knew how to sell myself, or I wasn't afraid to sell myself, I guess.
Okay. And wasn't it, so then what led you down to the agent path? Like didn't you have an injury in your mid-20s, and then that was kind of.
Yeah. So, I mean, fast forward, I was on Flow. At one point I was on like Proform for Burton, and then LibTech like sponsored me. And, you know, Jamie and I were together at that time. Then I went to the ride team. It's funny because I was just looking through a bunch of old stuff the other day, and I was reading, like, I'm kind of a little bit of a hoarder of my past. You know, I kept every, you know, sponsor me letter, or but I had written a letter to Tim and Steph Pogue, who were the original founders of the ride team. And I found this letter the other day, and I it's fresh in my mind. So it was interesting because even then I was like, you know, I had made a decision to go ride for the ride team, and that was hard because I really liked Mervin. They were, you know, a Northwest. They weren't even Mervin then. I don't think it was just Canoe and LibTech. But they were a Northwest company, and Pete and Mike were like family, and, you know, it was a hard decision, but the ride team was like this totally progressive skateboard, you know, kind of mentality. And I really liked the team, and there was just a lot of opportunity for me there. And I really meshed well with Tim and Steph. Like, they became like family. And so I was there for all of like the early days of Ride, and then the IPO, and also all of the challenges that inevitably come with, you know, a shift from a core brand to a publicly held company with accountability to shareholders and profit margins. And it really kind of fell apart. They brought in this awful CEO. I think his name was Bob Silver. And anyway, it kind of just lost its soul, and Tim and Steph, were the soul and heart of that brand. And so when it kind of fell apart, I was still there. I had torn my ACL at Bear Mountain. I think it was like 91 or 92. And they tried to terminate my contract. And I don't think that they did it because I was injured, but they did it because they were in a process of acquisition by K2. And so they were trying to, eliminate liabilities. And so I found a lawyer in Seattle. And I essentially sued them for wrongful termination.
Mm-hmm.
It had to go to arbitration, but I found a lawyer who took me on a contingency, who essentially made me write my own case. And through that process, I won an arbitration, but through that process, I really was inspired to really, that was the catalyst for my desire to become an agent. And that was because in my anti-authority snowboarding experience, I also really always, I had I have lefty liberal parents. I think I just was really passionate about advocating for the little guy or girl. And once the big corporations started coming in, it just felt like a really natural place for me to continue to be that kind of angst-filled advocate, but with like a place to put all that for good.
Yeah.
in helping kids realize you're all of a sudden you're negotiating with, Fortune 500 or, multi-million dollar multinational corporations. And, these kids, me included, were ill-equipped. And so that's where I really felt like, oh, wow, this is something that will keep me in the industry. I can continue to participate in this community and this business that I'm so passionate about, but in a way that was kind of rebellious or pushing up against
the corporates, right? And
yeah.
Nice. And sort of what was like were you like, did you have any mentors back then, or there was sort of people that were helping you, or were you kind of, would you say you kind of just
Not
carving
really.
your own path
Yeah.
sort of when you became an agent?
Yeah. I would say Susan Fox, who was my lawyer at the time, to see a woman lawyer who really like believed in me and trusted that even though I didn't, I don't have an Ivy League education or, there was something really validating about that experience and especially because I won, right? That I think just solidified my confidence in what was possible for me. And I think that, certainly I've had, lots of really great mentors. Bob McKnight at Quicksilver has always been really great to me and incredibly available in ways. And I was like the first Roxy girl in North America. So, Danny Kwok was there at the time, and he was very helpful. Tim and Steph definitely were huge for me at Ride, and provided a real opportunity for me to learn the business. And I had like carte blanche, like I could come in anytime. In my letter that I found the other day, I was like, I really want to be involved in research and development, and I want to learn marketing. And, I was always really putting myself out there. And so I think that just served me well in, pushing through the inevitable fear or, am I good enough, or, what can I do? And I think my success in snowboarding as a nascent industry was so good because it made me feel confident that like you can do anything, right? And I think there's definitely some luck to that, right? Like from a timing perspective, like it's not certainly not as easy for someone today, I think, to be there. You had to be there, right? And I was there. But there was something about those successes in that experience that allowed me the confidence, I think, to be kind of entrepreneurial or not afraid of disruptive opportunities,
Yeah.
because I didn't come from the status quo.
Yeah, that makes
Does that make
sense. Yeah. And so now, like, I guess sort of finding those letters and going back. I mean, are there any sort of moments that stand out as sort of like groundbreaking changes of, I guess the past 2 decades of being an agent? I mean, is there anything that you sort of feel that that was something that you feel really proud of, or I'm sure there's a number of things, but
Oh yeah. I mean, I have a lot. Like if I really like dig deep, like what are the things that I'm the most proud of? Um, outside of essentially developing, participating in the development of a new industry from its inception, really. I mean, obviously, I'm almost 50. So, 84 was pretty early. I wasn't one of the originals, but I'm pretty close. Um, I think that helping athletes like Torah Bright and Travis Rice and Paul Rodriguez, all of whom, I've worked with for 18 years. Those feel like my greatest achievements in those relationships and participating in their success in meaningful ways, having lifelong relationships with these humans like they are their family, and
Yeah.
I love them, and it's all an expansion of just our respective experiences, but I've somehow been able to meld business and family in a very unique way that has just been incredibly enriching. And I am perpetually in a state of gratitude for um, the opportunities that I have had to not only work with incredible talents, but also really meaningfully contribute to their success.
Yeah. And do you reckon because it sort of felt like family and there was this like strong connection with these with these people? I mean, is that something that we think like why it worked and why it was successful? For both parties or for everyone involved, really.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have a very clear understanding of what it takes to be successful in a agent client relationship. And it's a very mutual dance. Like the athlete has to want it really bad, and they have to want it for themselves, not for a parent or a familial member or for money. It has to be because it's something that they will pursue with almost a reckless abandon.
Yeah.
And um, a level of trust, and that takes time, but there's been so many instances with athletes who like always expect the agent to solve all of their problems. And the athletes that are the most successful, and I'm not saying that just in terms of like competitive results, but when I say successful, I mean like well-rounded, like happy, high functioning, emotionally intelligent beings. It takes time,
Yeah.
right? And I think the reason that I have been successful specifically with, the Olympians, whether that be Tora or Yuri, or now Jagger and Deshaun and Himana, like it takes years and years of work for both of us
Yeah.
to maximize the opportunity. And when there's a balance of respect and inherent trust, great things happen. If there's a lack of accountability, or you're projecting, or the only way you're happy is if you're winning, or you're not willing to like evolve kind of spiritually, mentally, physically, you have to like hit all three of those,
Yeah.
I think, to be truly a successful human. And I have just been very lucky in one, I think those archetypes have been drawn to me as a representative for them. And two, we've stuck it out for a long time. And I've had the opportunity to prove to them what I'm capable of.
Mhm.
And they clearly have shown what they're capable of. And that is just like a beautiful combination.
Yeah. And would you say, like, is there anything in your role as an agent that's changed sort of drastically from those like pioneering days when you started to I guess now with new sports being included into the Olympics? And
I mean, I would say, I am with Wasserman. I'm with one of the best and biggest sports agencies in the world. And I think in terms of resources and support and sophistication as it relates to business, my own business acumen that's developed, my Rolodex has developed. Like I would say, in a lot of ways, that's gotten easier,
yeah,
just because you establish a reputation. I have the benefit of being part of a large and respectable organization. So I certainly think there's a level of sophistication that has developed personally and professionally that makes things easier. Also, I'm not as, I don't have as much anxiety. I'm not the same. I don't have the same level. Like I put my time in, right? So I approach things at a more mature pace and perspective. And
Mhm.
that has made, uh, I would say, the job more pleasant.
Yeah. And I mean, like with all the things that you've been doing within Wiseman and for all the athletes, I guess that sort of ties in with the entrepreneurial projects as well, right? Because it's sort of juggling, um, having your own business and sort of doing all these different areas and wearing multiple hats. I mean, so you started Hot Nife a couple of years ago. Like, what was what was the reason behind that? Did you just you thought like you wanted to do something else and what like combine things or?
I think it was a few things. I think first and foremost, I have an entrepreneurial spirit. Like I constantly want to be growing in terms of I want to squeeze every last drop out of my experience as a business person.
Mhm.
And the only way to do that, I've been an agent for what, 20 plus years now. So the only way for me to like get the thrill, the excitement of, I'm still a risk taker. There is That is inherent. And I always want to be able to push the limits of my capabilities. And I want to be learning and expanding my experience.
Yeah.
And I chose cannabis because one, I believe in the medicine. I am kind of inherently anti big pharma. Once again, we go back to my kind of rebellious, my inherent rebellion and desire to push the limits as it relates to status quo. I am also incredibly progressive in my political position.
Mhm.
And I believe that cannabis has been demonized, you know, for a century, and it disproportionately affects Black and brown people, and all ties up into the industrial military prison complex. And I was very excited about finding a way for me to marry my entrepreneurial or kind of capitalist uh, pursuits with something that I really believed in from an ethos perspective, and could challenge maybe some of the industrial military complex in a way that also is proven in its benefits, for health and wellness,
Mhm.
and challenge that also through a business that
Yeah.
would or could be profitable, and once again kind of tearing down some of the structures that I think don't serve the general good.
Nice. Do you see a lot of similarities between, when you were starting off snowboarding and I guess with the new industry evolving? Um, yeah, is there kind of things that you sort of
There's definitely
that relate?
parallels. Yeah, there's definitely parallels. I mean, cannabis is an absolute shit show, especially in California. And I think it will continue to be until we see, at least some state regulatory autonomy,
Mhm.
and a move towards federal, at least deregulation, or I'm sorry, or decriminalization. I think that it's going to take time, but I really do believe that brands will be very important. I don't think we're there yet. And I think
Mhm.
it's just really messy, and trying to, to work in a regulated substance that is not federally legal. There are just so many challenges right now, but I think we're moving very quickly towards some solutions.
Mhm.
And I mean, the greatest part for me about my Hot Nife experience, which will continue to be a priority for me, is that I have like 5 years frontline California cannabis experience. And when I set the intention for growth, expansion, education, all of those things that I want out of my business life, that has delivered tenfold.
Mhm.
It hasn't been easy. It's been incredibly uncomfortable at times. Um, but I also have a very clear idea of what the potential is. And
Yeah.
I'm very confident in its ultimate success. It's just a lot harder. It's like one of those things, like if I'd known how hard it was, maybe I wouldn't have done it. So thank God I didn't. um, but yeah, it's provided, I think, it's funny because I'll like look at like what is my personal mission, and Hot Knife has provided a lot of that discomfort, but also education that I was looking for.
And are you from a business perspective, are you looking to kind of grow it organically, or will you, like, when the time
Yeah,
comes, then kind
I
of
think,
look at
we're
funding and
yeah, well, we're very focused on the California market. Um, we are in an interesting kind of holding pattern just because of COVID and
Mhm.
the ever changing market landscape. It's actually been a good time to hit pause. We are going to launch Hot Knife 2.0 in the coming months. There is a lot more interest, and I think once now that we have a friendly cannabis administration, or friendlier, let's say, um, I think the opportunities are gonna present themselves in ways that they just couldn't ever in a when you're a Scheduled I drug,
Yeah.
there's just so many limitations. And, I've kind of sat back and watched a lot of the other California baby brands just burn cash and capital trying to keep up. And so we're kind of in a reflection period and working on our launch strategy. And I'm very excited about, I guarantee you Hot Nife will be a national brand in 5 years. And we're going to do all kinds of fun stuff in action sports.
Awesome. With all that going on, I mean, what else are you? So, like, what are you focusing on this year in regards to sort of athlete management and the business?
Well, national selection is definitely a huge priority. The juggernaut that I think it ultimately could become, and I'm just so personally invested and passionate. Obviously, Travis has been my client for a really long time, and I'm just having so much fun working with him and kind of defining his legacy in a way that's really meaningful and gives back. I think if you look at a lot of Travis's contemporaries, they haven't left anything behind. It's all been, all consuming, self-serving. And I just really, really appreciate how important it is for Travis that he leave a lasting legacy as a snowboarder to his community and his people. And if you were at natural selection, like the level of love and camaraderie, I mean, I cried at least once every day the whole time I was there, because it was just, I was so moved by how beautiful our community is. It is truly an exceptional tribe. And so that obviously is not only a professional project, but a passion project. Tokyo Olympics is a big one. There's just so many unknowns. I mean, all of us living through a COVID experience and a global pandemic it's unprecedented, right? We're all doing our best. And, I have 3 men on the US national team for skateboarding, and managing that has been incredibly challenging because there's just so many unknowns. We still don't have a clear criteria for qualification. We have no idea what it's going to look like. And, these kids are in their 20s and have worked for the last 10, 15 years, literally. I mean, I signed Jagger when he was 8. He's 20. This is their life goal. And that's been tough. And I'm so amazed and impressed by their resilience. And I really appreciate kind of how dynamic it all is. And I just hope that we can have a good games.
Yeah.
I certainly want skateboarding to have quality representation. I think it's, as part of my archives the other day, I also found an entire 3-ring binder of spiral notebook of all of the reasons why I didn't like snowboarding in the Olympics. But my perspective has changed pretty dramatically. And not that I think skateboarding is perfect for the Olympics, but I've seen what it can do. And I think it has been so important for women. Like, it has changed the game for women in skateboarding in a really meaningful way. And I think that is incredibly exciting. And so I think, and from a business opportunity perspective, regardless of all the bureaucracy, it's an exciting time. And nobody wanted snowboarding in the Olympics. Now it's, probably 40% of winter's viewership. So take that, right?
And do you think the same thing will happen with skateboarding and surfing? Is that sort of maybe not the first games, but sort of like the longevity? And
I mean, I think any of it is good. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
I think that ultimately anything to bring greater exposure and opportunity, especially to inner city kids, is a positive opportunity and outlet, low barrier cost to entry, um, a lot of accessibility and
Yeah.
community. I think it's so funny because skateboarding's always we're always looked at as kind of the ruffians, the little skate rats, but ultimately, like, the skateboarding community is it is so culturally diverse, and there is so much positivity within the community amongst them, the
Yeah.
kids. I think that in that regard, it's really important. I think it's also incredibly opportunistic for countries like Brazil or Japan, who are really at the forefront of progressiveness.
Mhm.
Um, is it's just a an incredibly dynamic and exciting time for skateboarding. And as much as they're, it's fine because the core skaters or whatever, the traditional, archetype of the non-competitive skateboarder will continue to have plenty of opportunity with brands.
Yeah.
This will not cannibalize that for any of them, and it will only create more opportunity for more kids. And I think that is an exciting development.
Yeah. No, it sure is. And with all that going on, I mean, you've also got you're doing a sports management course
Yes,
as well, right? Yeah.
yes. So I am doing an online course with my collaborator Sue Izzo, who is a former agent and has worked with many athletes in her own right. And we are doing a sports management mastermind. You can find it online, just www.sportsmanagementmastermind. We're doing 2 free live courses, 90 minutes, and then we're going to do a 4 or 5 week intensive. And it's basically, the catalyst for that for us was really, how can we take all of the experience that we have and share that in a meaningful way that will help parents and kids set the table for their professional careers if they
Yeah.
so choose. And I have a 19-year-old daughter who is a freshman playing soccer starting at University of Arizona.
Awesome.
Um, and so I have quite a bit of balanced experience, not only in action sports, but also collegiate, as a mother and as Ava, my daughter, probably doesn't know this yet, but I'm definitely going to be her agent. And um, I think, it's like, what is my why at 49? Like, what is important to me? What gives me joy? Where do I find joy in the work? And so much of that is about, like, sharing or empowering my clients, um, so that by the time we're done with their athletic careers or as their representative, they have learned enough to be empowered to be good business people and to be happy, functioning, um, you know, humans.
Yeah.
And so this is really my way of continuing that in sharing all of the information. And I think it'll also be a really great recruiting tool. Wasserman is obviously my primary um, role and responsibility, but finding ways for me to share information that will help, especially parents or young athletes, um, identify what is important for success
Mhm.
is personally really important to me, and this is a way for me able to share that in a meaningful way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. And what if people want to reach out to you? What's the best way of getting in contact?
Oh, well, they can DM me on Instagram. I'm Circe Snow, CirceSnow. I'm also on LinkedIn, Circe Wallace. And I mean, you can email me. C Wallace at teamwass, teamwass.com.
Nice. Cool. Circe, thanks so much for your time. Really looking forward to seeing what you're going to be up to for the rest of the year, specifically for natural selection. And yeah, can't wait to be watching that. And
yeah,
thanks a lot.
It was truly my pleasure. Thank you. I love going down memory lane.
Cool. Thanks, Circe.
Okay. Bye.
Cheers.